So we got that going there. Excellent. So let me go ahead and share the screen again. Yeah, I'm like trying to do something new here. Cool. Mute that. Mute that over here. There we go. Now I can do this. All right, we're getting there. And share. Now, can you all see that?
We see your actual desktop background.
So do you see the dealing with negative self-talk?
No, we see the window of Zoom.
Okay, hold please. Thank you, Stacy. I mean, Stephanie. Got so many amazing souls on my. So there we go. Try that one. Sharing there. How about that now?
Now you're good.
Excellent. Wow, look at that. I am multitasking. I have 3 screens going and I figured it out. Dealing with negative self-talk. So ask yourself, have any of you ever said any of this stuff? Anything you say that looks at something from a perspective of that won't work. Any negative self-talk is anything that you say that over focuses on your fears instead of your strengths. How many of you have ever said that? It over focuses on your fears rather than your strengths. Negative self-talk is anything you think or say about yourself that repeatedly focuses on the faults or flash instead of the positive qualities. Not sure what flash is there. Anything that you say causes you to see the world as filled with problems instead of opportunities and positive choices. I think that one, if we sat on that one for just a little bit, it might be quite amazing what we would actually come up with. Anything that you think or say that limits you from achieving anything that is real and possible. How many things, in one of the trainings that I do with students, I have them write down, and we've done this. I've had you say these, do this before. I doubt, here's the sad part. I doubt anybody has done this. And I know we've talked about it. What are the 50 times in your life, 100 times in your life, because there's been literally thousands. What are 100 times in your life you didn't think you had enough, you didn't think you were capable, you didn't think you had the capacity and the quantity or the quality to get through a particular situation, but you did? Do you have them written down? I know you could think of some, but has anybody done the 100? I want you to take time to write down 100 reasons why you've made it through. Why you've made it through, why you got to here. There's been 100 challenges you said, no frickin' way will I ever make it. And you're here. And I'm talking about some simple things that before you did it, you've never done it before. Could be as simple as walking, riding a bike, singing in front of a room, speaking in front of a room. Right? Crying in front of a room, whatever those embarrassing moments were, those challenging moments were, those gut-wrenching moments were. The only reason that you don't have more consciously is because of this negative self-talk. Because when you hear the rest of this story, there's 12 things I'm going to touch on. I doubt we'll get to all of them. We'll get to a couple of them. What does self-talk, negative self-talk sound like? Nothing goes right for me. I just know it won't work. Why even try? I can't do it. I'm so clumsy. This is just one of my days. Everything I eat goes right to my waist. Life sucks. I don't have the talent. Anybody ever mumble anything like that? Anybody ever tell you anything like that? Here's the challenge. Stace, do you have a question? Oh, do you have a question?
All of this is just softly touching on the stuff that I experienced growing up with chronic low self-esteem. And when I say chronic low self-esteem, and that this topic is quite soft in that regard, is that the negative self-talk is, or was, should I say, now that at this point in my life, was a lot more extreme. If you focus on this negative self-talk, no matter how small it is, it can quickly spiral into something far worse. And I know from experience that none of it helps you get to a better place, get the success or whatever you want in life. It does the complete opposite.
Negative self-talk sets you up to fail. When and where does all this programming happening? Where is it all happening? When does it all happen? Well, here's number one of the 12 things that we'll touch on. We're programmed from birth. From birth. Let me ask you this. When you come out of the womb, however you come out, C-section, womb, however it is, test tube, when you were born, were you negative? Now, I know you carried over traits and everything, but the mind that is now in this world, this three-dimensional plane that we live in, multi-dimensional plane that we live in, were you positive or were you negative? Were you just? Did you have some potentials? You were programmed from the instant you showed up here, from the instant that your brain could hold on to a memory. And that's a whole nother discussion about when does that happen? If the brain shows up, if the heart shows up before the brain shows up, when are you actually storing information? Everything you've heard, thought, said out loud or to yourself was temporarily recorded in your brain. How many of you get a phone number and you're like, okay, wait, and you could say it, but you got to say it like 1,000 times to yourself, and you're like, I forgot the phone number. Everything you say is temporarily recorded in your brain. It's what gets repeated that becomes permanent. Predicting failure. Self-talk predicts, if it's negative, failure. What do you think it predicts if it's positive? Success. It's harmful. It's all being recorded in your brain. Repetition makes it true. At least the brain thinks it's true. What Stacy just said is the reason that they come up with these titles of it now: chronic challenges, all of these things, low self-esteem. It wasn't low self-esteem. It was the only self-esteem you could have at the time when you were having that conversation. If you grew up in a positive family, you had a positive self-esteem. That's the only. How many of us, when we were growing up, thought everybody grew up that way? We didn't think we were unique. We didn't think we were special. If you got beat as a child, if your mom hit you, if your mom liked to use wooden spoons, you thought everybody, that was their training method, using wooden spoons. When your brain thinks it's true, it becomes true for you, even if it wasn't in the first place. There is no world.
Sean, I have a question. Talking about programming and birth, it's a personal experience. I try to be as positive as I can. Of course, I have my moments that my self-doubt comes, but for the most part, I always try to be positive, raise my children, encourage them and all of that. But, my oldest daughter, I'm working with her because it's totally the opposite. She's like, oh, I have this pessimistic thought. I don't wait for, anything good because then I won't disappoint me. So how was that programming, happening in her that, although her environment has been positive, encouraging, she created this negative thoughts. And
how old is she?
She's right now 23. And
has she ever talked to anybody else other than you?
No, yeah, she's going to see a life coach and it's helping her.
No, I'm talking about from the day she was born till 8 years old. Did she ever encounter anybody else?
Yes, of course.
That's where the programming came from. Did she ever watch TV?
No, but I think she spent a lot of time with my mom, and my mom, she tends to be a little on the, negative, and I think maybe TV also, some of the people that care of her, when she was little, and
So here's the thing, it happens from everywhere, from people of influence, from teachers,
mhm,
from every place. It happens to people who we consider authority figures.
mhm.
And there's a little bit of a desire for, is she your first daughter?
Yeah, she is.
So what happens with first children? Don't sometimes they want a desire to be a little rebellious?
Yeah.
So wouldn't anything you wouldn't anything you believe, she's got to believe different?
Oh, that's clever. I never thought it like that.
So during this whole time, then you keep punishing yourself going, why is she like this? I didn't raise her to be this way. No, thank God you raised her to be the way she is, because it could be a lot worse, couldn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So watch this. You were not born to think negatively. We learn to think that way.
Mm-hmm.
What was your potential when you were born? Literally. So think about this for just a second, folks. Just take a breath for just a second. What was your potential from birth? Wasn't it unlimited? There was no path. There was no, from that child, when Mason was born 16 years ago in October, what was his potential? Anything. Could he have spoken Chinese? Could he have learned Arabic? Could he have, I don't know. I mean, it's unlimited, the potential. How does his possibilities get designed? Based on the environment he was born into. So what was your potential at birth? What was your potential at birth? What do you, yeah, infinite, absolutely infinite. So let me ask you this now. What do you believe your potential is today? How many of us might say, yeah, well, the calendar says, the clock says that can't possibly be anymore. I've got to move on with different things. Is your potential totally unlimited today? The real answer is yes. The real answer is yes. But where does the limit of your potential start? Would I tell you you have a limited potential, or would you tell you have a limited potential? This is how negative self-talk sinks its way in. What took you from unlimited to your current mindset? This is sometimes difficult for people when I'm doing trainings to go through this. Why? Because it's really a kind of a, for some it's a slap on the face, others it's a slap on the butt, time to get up and go. Sometimes it could be paralyzing. Programming, what you have done and what others have done to you. If when Stacy was born, we took her to India and she was raised by a different family, might she have a different accent?
Actually, that won't be far off because one side of my family is Indian.
Funny how that came up. So here's step 3. Here's part 3 of this process. What you repeated frequently were physically and chemically wired into your brain. What you repeated frequently were physically and chemically wired into your brain. It's called who you are. The first 18 years of your life, as much as 70%, 77% of your programming was negative. Some of us, that number might be higher. And that's if you lived in a reasonably positive household, 77%. This isn't like you were born on Skid Row. This is a reasonably positive household. What if you were kidnapped as a small child, taken to a different home, different family, different part of the world, one that was the enemy of your first country? You wouldn't have the family, education, friends you have now. You'd be totally different. Your environment would be different. Would you still be you? Yes, you would still be you, but everything else about you would be different. What would be different? What could be different? Maybe you would believe in a different religion. Maybe your accent would be different for sure. Maybe your beliefs about your home country would be different. Maybe they could be your sworn enemy. There's kids who are born today that still have sworn enemies of other countries, don't they? What if they took all the kids that were being born today and put them over in the other country that was their sworn enemy, and they knew nothing different, and they grew up? Wouldn't they be sworn enemies against their parents by the time they realized it? I know it sounds far-fetched, but isn't it so true? The brain doesn't know the difference between something that is true or something false. The brain is designed to act on the strongest, fix that little spelling error there, the strongest programs it receives as though they are true, whether they're true or not. What makes the strongest programs it receives? What makes a program the strongest? Repetition. What if that really happened, the child being taken to the sworn enemy? Could it be possibly that you would see the you of today as the enemy, right? Suppose there was a twin and you were separated at birth, and one went to that country and one came to this country, and they were sworn enemies, and you grew up and you found your twin later on, and you were both the ones, because you have similar personalities, that were leading the charge against your sworn enemy. And you met on the battlefield and realized that was your twin. How many of you meet on the battlefield of your world today in this moment, and you see your twin on the opposite side, your other self, your other mindset, and you say, how could you betray me? The part of you that says you're not tall enough, you're not good enough, you're not strong enough. It all happens from programming. It all happens from programming. It doesn't happen otherwise. Your alligator brain, your autonomic nervous system, the one that makes you fight for life, right? Hold somebody under the water. It only takes 2 minutes for them to get their fight for life. The rest of the stories we tell ourselves, all of the things that we need, all of the things we're not good enough at, comes from programming. What does your programming tell you about you? It guides us to our beliefs that the things we will or will not do in our lives. Programming for you says you won't walk down the street and just slap people. If somebody's walking down the street slapping people, we call them crazy, don't we? They're like, oh my God, what are you doing? That is ridiculous. You just don't do that. Why not? Why don't you? Why wouldn't you? Could you? Could you? Then why don't you? Well, it's not the right thing to do. Who told you? How did you learn that? Maybe because when you watched kids that were little, maybe you were the little kid that always got slapped in your preschool or kindergarten or pre-K or whatever. And our parents told us, don't do that. That's not polite. That's not right. You ready for this? As much as 90% or more of your programs are unconscious. 90% of what you do is completely hidden from you. When I say this, maybe some of you have heard this. When I say success is a math problem, here's the math problem. 90 versus 10. 10% of what you do consciously, subconsciously, works in your favor. 90%, up to 90% running hidden from you is challenging you and keeping you stuck. How scary is that? Well, here's the good news. Once you learn something, what can you do with that information? You can become aware. This is what meditation does. It slows down that 90-10 because it could be 70,000 thoughts versus 7,000 thoughts. Which one do you think is going to win out? Now, you could have one thought that leaves you scarred and marked for life in a good way or in a bad way. Where's Rhonda? She had something happen to her yesterday in an unbelievable way that when I called her, I thought some other trauma was going on. I couldn't possibly imagine she was thinking the same news I was thinking. Because trauma and joy all can show up in the body the same way. It's the story we tell ourselves. If I told you somebody was crying uncontrollably, couldn't control their breathing, and they couldn't put sentences together, and they were just in shock, you would say they were in an accident, they just saw somebody pass away, something. No, pretty much a fun day. How is that possible? It was programming. Bumping up against everything that never happens all of a sudden happened in an instant. 90% of the reason why all of that was taking place is from all of the unconscious programming that had happened inside of her and in her body. Along with your genes and your experiences, you are the result of the programs, where's Gisela, that you receive. You were not the only one that influenced your daughter.
Yeah, but you're telling about the story of the kid being hit at school. And I just had a funny story. That really happened to me when I was in kindergarten. I had this long hair and I had this friend who was always pulling my hair. And now I figure out that maybe he liked me because how kids act. But at the time, I didn't know that. And I came home, I told my mom, and she said, well, the next time he does that to you, you hit him. I said, okay, Mom, I'll do that. Well, I go to school next day and he comes again, pulls my hair, and I turn around, I kick him on the floor, I punch him so hard that I was sent to the detention. The kid's shirt all rip off, bruises everywhere. So I guess she trained me to be a fighter. I don't know, but it's funny now that, how these stories really determine, how you react in certain things and their programming. Instead of my mom telling me the positive thing, she refers, the alligator mode fight, survival.
Do you remember what grade it was?
Kindergarten.
So that was more than a dozen years ago or so, right?
Yes.
So here's the thing about that. You remember kindergarten. Do you remember what happened the day before that?
Maybe a
Do you remember
normal
what
school.
happened? Do you remember what happened the day after that?
Well, all the kids really respect me after that. Nobody wanted to mess up with me.
But I mean, do you remember what you had for lunch? Do you remember what time you woke up?
No, not really. I don't remember much.
Here's my point. Here's my point. We remember the emotional things. You can remember him grabbing your hair and you throwing him on the floor, and you remember this from kindergarten as if it was yesterday.
Yes.
But we don't remember the week before, the week after. Why does that day stand out? Because something emotional happened. A stand took place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but you tell the rest of the story, and that stand built up over time. Him pulling your hair, you talking to mom. Then mom finally tells you, here's what you do. And it's the culmination of the day we've had enough.
Mm-hmm.
So listen carefully. The day you've had enough could be today. The way you decide to take action against this negative self-talk, to use the negative self-talk to say, wow, I didn't know that was the reason. I choose to change that. Today could be the
Mhm.
day you've had enough. How do you start to break some of these things and become aware of some of these things? Is first you got to know what you're going to change. Could you imagine hiring a contractor, writing him a check for 10 grand and saying, there you go. He walks in and goes, there you go. What? Fix it. And he just goes along and says, yep. All right. And he starts ripping stuff out. And he starts fixing it. Whose liking do you think he might fix things? To his own. To
Mhm.
his own programming. When your mom told you to do that, maybe your mom did your mom ever tell you if she got hit or picked on in school? And she
No,
didn't?
I think she was a little bully when she was growing up.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
All of this is programming. And this is why I'm going to throw an injected value in here. This is why you should journal. You should become aware of your thoughts, because if we're having this conversation right now and Gisela comes up with something from kindergarten and all of this stuff happens, what do you think the chances are of the virgin prospect who you're going to sit down and now with your intellect, as Sadhguru would say, now with your intellect, your sharp intellect, your aware intellect, you're going to slice them all up and say, here's where your problem is.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think they would sit there in horror of their own fears, of their own doubts, of I
Yeah,
can't be like
absolutely.
you. I can't do what you do. How did you get this good? And you're like, get this good. I'm just getting started. But you're so much better than they are. Why? Because you've spent an hour in personal development. You've spent 10 years in personal development. You've got more books than they knew were ever printed.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody says in their stories, tell me who you hang around. Tell me the 5 people you hang around, and I'll tell you where you'll be in 5 years. Tell me the people you hang around, and I will almost pinpoint where you'll be in 5 years. Tell me the books you read, and I'll tell you where you'll be in 5 years. Tell me the seminars you go to. I'll tell you where you'll be in 5 years. Show me where you're at right now. I'll tell you what you've been doing the last 5 years.
Yeah, scary for most people.
And you're going to sit there with your sharp intellect. I say you, editorially you. You're going to sit there with your sharp intellect and go, oh, yeah, here's this, here's that. I used to
Mhm.
be that way.
Yeah, where's the empathy? Remember where you come from. Because we all been there.
How many of you, so let's just ask a question. How many of you, Noah came up with a comment. I just clicked why women remember more things than men, because we used to pull your hair. We used to do all this stuff, whatever it was, whatever Noah's story was that triggered something in his mind, why you remember this stuff. Any girls, ladies on the call, any of you ever experienced anything like that? Could have been kindergarten to college.
Oh my
If you
God,
were-
maybe I left that boy's scar for life, afraid of women.
I was going to go down that path, but I figured we'll talk on that on another day. Because I bet his side of the story is a lot different than your side of the story.
Yeah.
So here's my point, though. Listen carefully. So yes. So my question was, is if Gisela just told her story, how many of you said, oh my God, that happened to me too? Listen carefully. This is why it's important to have stories. When she just told that story of her experience, some of you kicked in with that. Some of you linked in with that. Some of you said, oh my God, something similar happened to me. Now, Gisela didn't have to be vulnerable and break down and cry because, well, she was probably the champion. If we were talking to the other little boy who got his ass kicked, he might get a little emotional about it, saying, I didn't realize this. I didn't do this. I didn't know this. But yes, his day of this, now maybe he doesn't remember it. Maybe he doesn't remember it. Maybe he got his butt kicked and he blocked it out. I don't know what happened on his side of the story, but there's 2 sides to that story. My point is that when you're sitting down with a prospect, this is what just happened was a rapport story. I wasn't beat up in school. I was always the biggest kid, tallest kid in school. Now, I was afraid of my mom. If I did anything, if I came home with a note, it was not going to be fun. Now, my mom didn't beat me. She spanked us. She disciplined us, but I didn't come home every day to a beating. I would say 99% of the days I didn't come home and get beat. I did rip my pants one time in 7th grade and thought the world was going to be over. I split my knee open and the nurse was going, "Oh my God, I thought we got your knee to feel good." I said, "No, I'm still crying over my ripped pants." I grew up on a farm. The person you see before you now is not the same little farm boy kid that grew up. Well, it's actually the same person if you just saw a picture of me. Yep, that's him small, that's him big. That's the only thing that's the same. Along with your genes, right? Oh my God, you do that just like your papa. And Mason never really got to know his grandfather on Michelle's dad, but he does so much like his papa. So much. I mean, it's ridiculous. Along with your genes and your experience, you are also a result of the programs you receive. When Mason was a baby, I was blessed enough to have gone through a whole lot of training from a very early age. And we made it a rule in our house, you do not say the word no to the baby. You just don't say no. The word no is an action. The word no is a decision. The word stop is an action. So any of the nannies that we had, any of the babysitters, any of the family members that came over, we had a sit down with them. And we explained why you don't say no to Mason. At this point, he's not conscious of, at least I thought he wasn't conscious of understanding decision-making. What they're finding out is babies understand math. Listen carefully. Babies understand math. How old do you think a baby has to be before to understand math? I'd just be curious. Just throw up a number, crazy number how old? How old do you think a baby has to be to understand math? Just throw something up in the chat. 2, okay? 3 to 4, 6 months. Year, 3 years. You ready for this? 10 hours. 10 hours old. 10 hours, it understands math. It understands yes, 10 hours. They took studies of children, and what they found out is that they would show them symbols with 3 images on it, 3 images on it, 4 images on it, and they watched their stare, and they thought, oh, the one with 4 images, it's because it's broke a pattern. No, what they found out, they did this research in the 60s. Then they did it again in the 70s. And what they found out is not that it was 3, that 4 broke the pattern. It was that they recognized this one 3 and this one 3 were the same because they could see them and they recognized them as the same. And the 4th one was different, so it drew their attention. They didn't get that in the first study in the 60s because they didn't have the technology. They can understand feelings. They can do feelings and shapes from less than 10 months old. They take binkies, nubbies, whatever you grew up with as your pacifier. They put them in a baby's mouth in pitch darkness. They take them out and they have 2 binkies, 2 of those little things on the table. One has bumps on it, one's smooth. The one that was just in their mouth, they stare at more. They can look at that and see the shape of the binky and recognize it, right? Because there's some places where they talk about if you lose your sight, they now have this thing that some people, you wear it on your tongue and it gives you the shapes of things. It plays like the images of the shapes. You can now literally see because of the feelings on your tongue, shapes and images. People who are totally blind by wearing something on your tongue. Tell me the body is not absolutely amazing. And tell me that the programming we have from everything from how many of you have the radio on when you're at home and you're listening to news that's probably not the best. You got CNN on, you have some television show on news that talks about the disasters and this and that and how everybody's polarized against each other. All of that is programming your amazing brain. How many of you are highly charged when it comes to your religion or comes to your politics? That's programming. There is no economy out there. There's no economy out there that you're a part of. There's only your economy. There's no world out there that you're a part of, only your world. And it's the programming you receive that makes you judge the world you're in. Why is it now that it's for kids in Mason's school, it's like the cool thing to be gay, to be homosexual, to be transgender? It's like, and you're like, that kid really? Man, they don't come off that way. No, that's just a cool thing. It's like some days they are, some days they aren't. Really? Really?
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's a thing now?
Yeah.
See, when I came out, it was like the worst thing in the world that your child could be.
Now, it was how many years ago for you?
14.
So my brother, it was 30. Think it was a little different back then?
Oh yeah.
I mean, and so every day why does it get better? Why does everybody thank Ellen, who, oh my gosh, you made it so much easier? Because it was somebody of prominence. It was and they made that decision. It's all I'm saying is that it's the programming that we receive. How many of you on this call were the first to go to college? I bet there's some of you that are the first on here to go to college in your family. What was that stigma? Did you want to be the first one? All that to say, could you imagine? I remember growing up and seeing interracial marriages. A white person and an African-American together. And the stories and the scuttlebutt and the restaurants and yada, yada, yada. Oh my gosh. Now it's like, what? Really? Who was worried about that? It's the programming. A lot of this stuff takes a generation, 40 years to get through. Everything you believe, everything you think, you say, and do is results of the programs you received, both from others and from yourself. When I do trainings, sometimes I'm asked to speak publicly for companies. 90% of what you believe was given to you. Maybe even more. 97% of what you believe was given to you. You had nothing to you had no say over it. It's when you decide to make a difference. It's when you decide to take back control. It's when you decide to look at what is the thing that governs that. What is the engine behind this vehicle called me? What is the engine behind this conversation that I'm having right now? Why do I have this conversation with you right now? A lot of this is because of the programming I've created for myself. I think this is important. This is a very personal opinion. There's a lot of facts that are shared in here. I believe they're important, that they should be shared. I have a platform called Zoom that I get to do it. I have a community called the Daily Awakeners. Get out of your effing way, that show up because they like, well, okay, I don't mind being programmed by Sean. I like the way he challenges me, and he challenges me in a good way. This is all programming. It's why it would be extraordinarily valuable for you to take and look at it and say, when I receive this, what does it do through me, for me, to me, with me? Does it help me more on my path or less on my path? When I get off this call and I get back into life, does that enhance? Does what I just spent an hour of my day getting started, does what I do next enhance it, or am I in a constant battle with what happens next? Am I constantly fighting against the joy that I'm supposed to have in my life, that I believe I can have? Here's an experiment. Y'all like a little experiment? I need you to put your thinking caps on for just a moment. I want you to think of someone you know or know of, and that you consider them to be a truly successful person in their life. Think of, it doesn't have to be alive, but think of somebody that you know, maybe that you've seen, you'd had a conversation with, you have more than just a vague opinion of them. You actually have met them, had a conversation with them, talked with them, and you believe that in life, they're truly what you would consider a successful person. They would fit the description of the most successful person I can think of. And you can see them pretty clearly. Now imagine them in the room with you, standing off to your right, wherever, in whichever direction right is for you, but this is my right. Imagine them just standing there, and you can see them. And you see this most successful person just standing there. We're just going to let them stand there for just a second, because we're going to have somebody come off to your left, and we're going to add one more person, the least successful person you know. They're failing in life. The kid who left home, drug use, maybe 17 years old. If someone knew him back then, and if they found him today, he's probably, or she's probably in an alley, but his parents probably wouldn't recognize him or her. That's my image. And that person is off here to the left of me. Think of that person that comes to mind for you. Now imagine them in the room with you on the left. So to your right is the most successful person you could think of. And to your left is the least successful person. If you were to just look at their posture, the way they're standing, would they be standing different? What might they look like? Totally different. Okay. The person who's wildly successful, what do you think? How do you think their posture would be? Person who's the least successful person, what do you think they're doing as they're looking at the room? Are they like looking down at the floor and they're looking around? What if these two babies were born on the same day in the same hospital? Wasn't their potential the same? Possibilities the same? Unlimited? But when you see them here today, right now, what do you think the words are? What do you think words are that the successful person uses in their life? What do you think are some of the foundational words that they use in their conversations? Type them. What do you think some of the words are that the least successful person uses in their life? Yep. Look at the words that are going through the chat. I will, I'll try, positive, I can't, I'm wealthy. So if I just read these and I were to ask you to put it, to move those words underneath each of those people, where would you move them? I can, I will. Would that go under the positive or the negative person? We know this. We know this. How much of what you listen to on a daily basis is negative? How much of what you listen to on a daily basis is absolutely wildly positive, drawing you forward, pulling you forward? It's either pulling you forward and up or pulling you down and backwards. And listen, you could listen to the same thing I listen to, and couldn't we both hear positive and negative in the same way? I would go, man, that is awesome. You're like, dude, that's like the worst thing ever. What? How is that possible? And music. How many of us listen to music that we like, we love, and our spouse is like, I told you, I don't want to listen to that while I'm in the car with you. Your self-talk right now is the replay of the programs that are the strongest. The 90%. Thank God the autonomic nervous system kicks in and beats my heart and runs my blood pressure and does all of those thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and 10 million cells a second are rebuilding right now. Would you say every cell in your body has memory? every cell in your body is made up of water. Water has memory. You guys heard Gisella's story this morning about the little incident that happened in kindergarten? How does that memory stay in her body? Because from the day it happened, every cell that has been produced has created a memory somewhere in each cell, because her body is different than the body of a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, isn't it? Isn't her body completely rebuilt new? The brain, the skin every so many days, the intestine every so many days. Every 7 years, I think it's 7 years, you've got an entirely new body. She's taller than I think she was when she was in kindergarten, so her bones are different. How does this stuff resonate in her body? Because it's a memory carried over from that day at a subconscious level. If she could spit that story out like that right now, hadn't that story been running for the last 50 years, 40 years, 20 years since the day it happened? I don't know how old she is. I'm not going to ask her to tell us how old she is. My mama would get mad at me. But that story has run in her body since that day. Some of you have had traumatic experiences as children. That story runs in your body to this day, and it's running a repetitive story, because if I ask you about it and you get emotionally charged about it, that story is running at an emotionally charged at a subconscious level, ready at a moment's notice to protect you from the saber-toothed tiger in the room. There's no saber-toothed tiger. No, when your phone rings and it's the people asking you for money. Yeah, look, yeah, that's the same thing that happened when you were a kid. You weren't prepared. You weren't ready. You couldn't do the right thing. You let somebody down. When somebody calls you, how is it possible, if our product works, if we mean no harm, and there's only good that could come out of somebody using your product or service, why do we ever get scared on a cold call? Why would you ever be scared talking to somebody? How could you ever not fall in love with the person on the other end of the phone? Programming. When you were little, it was, what were we all screamed at? Don't to what? You don't think that programming runs through? Don't talk to strangers. Your mom would get mad at you, and if you did talk to a stranger, she'd jerk you by the arm. And you're like, but they were so nice. But your parents had an opinion of that person as well. Some of you did talk to strangers, and bad shit happened. Now we're going to put you in a business where it's network marketing, and you got to go talk to strangers. Go talk to strangers. Just tell them about the products. Tell them about the company. Tell them about the comp plan. Tell them why it'd be so great. You should be trading. You don't think that triggers like 1,001 memories of the things they should have done that they never did and that they're still screwed up in the head about? And you're going out there telling them you should be trading? Have you lost your mind? The answer is yes. You have absolutely lost your mind. You have not forgotten your memory, but your mind is not your memory. When they say you have lost your mind, what your friends are telling you, what your mom was telling you when you did something different, you came home from school and you got a suspension. Have you lost your mind? Have you lost your memory of who you are and what position you're supposed to be in life? By God, today, I hope you lose your mind. I hope you lose it. I hope you lose your memory of the things that are not serving you. That thing that Gisela said this morning is not serving her. That's been a couple dozen years it's been not serving her, but it's been running at the subconscious till a memory triggers it. Oh, what you just said made me think of this. I'm thinking, maybe 2nd, 3rd grade, maybe 5th grade, kindergarten. That story has been programming, running in her background. Anybody who messes with me is going to get the horns. Do you think that comes across in a presentation? Do you think there's people that call her, she's strong-willed? It's from kindergarten. How many of us have a kindergarten story that we had forgotten about, but it is guiding us? It is like a searchlight looking for anything, any potential that's like a little boy who pulls our hair. I will kick that ass. I was given permission to do that. Could be an opinion. That's not good enough. Could be an action. Why'd you do that? This is all of us. This is why this business of network marketing, MLM, me loving more, me learning more, is one of the most difficult professions that exists, because it doesn't require you to help other people get good. It requires you to get good, and other people follow along saying, if they can do it, I can do it. That's the only thing this business demands, is that you get better every day. And when you get better, your check goes up. When you believe in you, other people say, if they believe in themselves, I can believe in myself. If other people have the ability to use your belief, if you have so much belief in yourself, you're able to give some away. How many of you can give away your belief to a prospect? Well, I don't know. I don't know how to do that. Yes, you do. If you've had children or family members, have you ever given them belief? You believed in them when they were on a project or on a position or going to do something. Be aware of them, Gisela. Now that you know it, be aware of how many times you're going to grab that boy today, because that boy's still running around out there. You call it different patterns today. You can go back to that little girl and just before she goes and beats the crap out of the little boy, say, this program that you're about to do is what gives you strength. And you're now able to use all of this determination for love.
Mm-hmm. That was beautiful. Thank you, Sean.
But
Now
you go
I'm
back to
aware
that
of
little
it.
girl. You go back to that little girl, and when you feel your hair jerk, and just before you show up with that little girl, just before she's about to level us, dude, and say, before you do this, this is to protect you. But what's going to come from this for the next 30, 40 years, 50 years, 100 years that you're alive? You're going to use this moment to ensure that you are loved and that you will protect everyone around you. You will use this instant, this moment for good. You're not a bad person. And then let her go beat the crap out of them. And now that'll help to rewire the cells in your body as you sit here today, as you went through the last however many years it was. It can rewire your body. They've proven this. Just go back and tell her, and then give her a little kiss and say, watch his right hand or whatever. You know what I'm saying? But go back and then come back to today and see if that story doesn't sit differently with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's only a memory, but it's a memory you've wired for a particular way. Go back and make it more emotional. Tell her, he probably didn't mean any harm, but your mom said, take care of this. And now you're going to take care of this. What's about to happen in the next 30 minutes will be life-changing. You may forget it most days, but I just want to say thank you, because it's the part of you that has given me strength over these years. Just go tell the story differently.
Mm-hmm. And create this new memory to repetition and repetition for the next 50 or whatever many years I have to my life, because it's been playing there for the last 50 years. It's time to let it go.
Oh, no, don't let it go. Just remake it, because you can't let it go.
Remake it.
It's been wired in so strong. We're just going to tell the story a new way. We're going to be at least become aware of it. If you got a nail in your tire, how many of you have ever had a nail in your tire and didn't know it? Now, I can pretty much bet this. If Noah and I were riding in a car and we had the windows down, we would both know there's a nail in the tire. Our hearing is probably sensitive enough with equipment to hear that tire going tick, 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 tick. And you could, with the windows open, you wouldn't even be paying attention to it. With the radio on, we could hear it, because we know that's a potential failure. I grew up around maintenance equipment. But that's because that's the story we have. We were tuned for that. Because if we didn't find the nail in the tire before it was too late, we'd have a blowout, and then we'd have a 4-hour change the freaking tire. I look for nails in people's tires because I know they don't see it, especially in my community when I'm out driving, because most of the guys are at work. I know this is very stereotypical and chauvinistic, but there's a lot of women who don't necessarily have to work in my communities. So I'm always looking for nails in the tires. And I about once every probably 2 times a week, I'll find a nail in a woman's tire and say, ma'am, because it scares the hell out of them, right? Guy in a parking lot, and all of a sudden their mind just goes, their programming goes, he's got to molest me. So I have to come with my radio voice and my smile, making a compliment, and say, listen, when I had parked next to your car, did you know you had a nail in your tires? A what? Huh? And I show them and I say, it's fine right now. It's not leaking. It may be, and based upon the nail head size, you can tell how deep the nail is. There's usually a correlation between that. You may want to have that checked. Oh, thank you for a nail in their tire. How many of your prospects have a nail in their spirit of possibility? And maybe we're talking a railroad spike. Did you know there was a guy, I think it was 1924, maybe it was earlier. 1924, guy had a railroad rail through his head. No, it shot up this way, shot up right through his brain. Totally conscious, totally aware. And that's when they started figuring out about lobotomies and different things. Sitting there totally conscious. Except he had this railroad rail through his head. Your self-talk right now that's happening right in this moment, what you believe with, what you don't believe with, is because of the programs that are strongest in you right now. I'm just reading Steph's comment here. Yeah, funny how that happens. So, what'd you learn? What'd you like today? Was this valuable? I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of the programming, the lot of the way that I do things now is because of a lot of what's happened in childhood, and possibly consequently some of the trauma that I've been through that may or may not have been avoided, but it happened. But one thing that's kind of come up at the end was in relation to yesterday that you picked up on, that I've had to do a lot of things myself and not rely on anyone. And through Gisella's story, I've come to realize where it's come from. Because as a child, when I was in primary school, I was talking about 7 years old, 6, 7 years old. I was the big kid. Someone asked me a question, I answered honestly, and from that point on, I ended up being physically bullied most days for a good couple of years. And the more I pleaded with parents, I pleaded with teachers, nobody believed me, nobody did anything, until I then turned around and said, oh, I've had enough, and hit him. And then things stopped. And that's the moment where I'm realizing that my self-reliance has come from that moment, because I was put in a position where I was forced to.
Jerry said, learning how to figure out what my programs are. So how many of you remember back in the day? God, I feel glad I get to say this, but then it's like, holy crap, how old am I? Back in the day, how many channels did we have growing up? Those of us that are a little more mature. 3. So we had ABC, NBC, CBS, and then if you had TV antennas and tinfoil, you could get something on UHF. So, Jerry, if ours was 3, 3, 5, and 8, those were our channels. The ABC, NBC, CBS, 3, 5, and 8. This was in Ohio. So if I turned it to channel 2, what would I get? Snow. I would get snow. And so therefore that my channel wasn't programmed. There was no signal out there for it to pick up. So a couple of things when you check your programming, you got to check your signaling, got to check your station, right? So as it relates to becoming a millionaire, tune to that station, a millionaire. How would a millionaire stand? How would they talk? How would they walk? What would they say? What would they eat? How would they treat others? How do you think a millionaire treats others, talks, eats, walks? Because if you think they're an asshole, guess what? It's going to be hard for you to do. Become a millionaire. Well, I'm going to be different. Not if you don't, if that's the way you see every one of them, that's the programming. So when you want to find out what programs you have, tune into that station. The only reason you're not farther along is because wherever you're going along to you were told you're not good enough to be that person. You're not strong enough to be that person. You're not tall enough. You're not white enough. You're not dark enough. Your hair isn't long enough. It's not short enough. It's too long. You follow me? What is the qualities of the person you're becoming? What have you been told about them? There was no way you could ever be on a program like this and have a conversation do you know what my mom would say if I told her I'm going to do a morning call when I'm in my 50s and I'm going to have people from around the world listening to me? This is in let's say I was 5 years old. I was born in 65. So I'm 5 years old. It's 1970. And I told my mom, I think I'm going to have a global call when I'm in my 50s. And every morning I'm going to wake up and are you stupid? That was my mom's favorite line. Are you stupid? You're nuts. Don't be stupid. That was her favorite line. Don't be stupid. Didn't have cell phones. So how am I going to have a global? I don't think my mom had traveled outside the United States. Less than 5% of the people ever travel outside of the United States. I was going to have a global community. I was going to stand on stage in 30 countries, be translated into 40 languages, couldn't spell, had a 0.9 grade point average. What do you think if I told my mom, listen, I know I got a 0.9 grade point average and they don't want to invite me back. You guys are going to have to put in a baseball field or football field or something. So you guys are going to have to donate a lot of money to this private school for me to stay. But I'm going to have a global community of people that I can count on in my life. Seriously? Seriously, you think that's going to happen? Danny said, here's something to consider with you. Oh, gosh, yes. Everything is programming from Instagram. And now you want to get a little scientific. I'll leave you this with this little mind blow thing. If I said yesterday or maybe Wednesday, that they now found out that happiness is contagious, meaning that if somebody you like lives within a mile of you, you have a 14% chance higher of being happy than if they live a half mile away from you. There's a 50% chance based upon where they physically live. Their happiness and your happiness is influential in them. What do you think negative is influential? What is the programming you're dealing with about your neighbors who make noise all the freaking time? And you're like, oh my God, she's home with the stiletto heels again. If you live in an apartment building or you live in a neighborhood where there's noise down the street and you're like, they just aggravate me. Programming. This is why you can't manage time. You cannot manage time. There's no such thing as time management. Somebody plays loud music next door that you don't like, that you can't manage time. You can't manage time. You can only manage how you respond in that time. That's programming, Jerry. Again, I love it. That's why I live in the country. That's programming. I live in the country so I don't have to listen to noise. Oh, so there's no birds out there? Nobody has an F-350 with big pipes on it? Nobody cuts wood with a chainsaw out there?
Or foxes squealing at midnight.
An owl eating squirrels? Again, totally get it, but that's the programming that you have that says, I like the country. I love the country. I also love being on a jet next to people that are just absolutely insane. I love being in airports. I love being late for a flight. I love being early for a flight because I know if I'm early, the gate's going to be right next door. If it's going to be late, it's going to be across the freaking terminal. I love that. Are you being programmed, or are you using your program to benefit you?
So that last statement you just made, Sean, that's powerful. Say that again.
I don't know what I said.
He said, are you being programmed? Or are you using your program to benefit you?
Yeah.
So that is one thing that's probably one of the biggest things you have taught me. And why are you laughing?
I'm just thinking of different moments.
Oh, yeah, that's hysterical. When you can find someone in your life, like I did with Sean, that can help you see that and understand that, it is a game changer. And the word that spirals around my head is trajectory. It puts you on a total different trajectory. You're still you, but you're using everything that's inside of you, everything that you've been programmed with, or everything that you're programming yourself with currently or accepting to receive. It changes the whole direction of where you're going and the velocity at which you're getting there, the speed of which you're getting there, the force at which you're getting there is totally different. So if it's the whole, what has spiraled around, even especially after last night, is what you're surrounding. We hear what you're surrounding yourself with, who you're surrounding yourself with is so important. And you started the call with that, saying, I can tell you what you're like by you telling me the 5 people you hang around most or the things you listen to. Let me tell you, there's another statement that you and Scott Schilling has said before. And I thought about it last night while staring at myself in the mirror after a shower. And it's, what you do now pays off. And this doesn't mean in money, it can mean in any way, pays off in 6 to 9 months. It's been exactly 9 months since I went to the March U+1 event that you and Scott did. So the programming that you are currently playing, if it's the same programming and you're still wondering why you're sitting where you're sitting, then you probably need to change your programming. Or you need to have somebody help you reprogram, or to learn to utilize that programming that you've already received in a different way. So that last comment when you said that, that's money right there. That's gold.
We all have that capacity. The question is as if we start to use, if all of a sudden, what were we told? So listen carefully. What were we told as children if we started to use people to our advantage? Did we get accolades and attaboys and stars in our things? If we used the kids sitting next to us and we cheated off of them, we used them to our advantage. You start to use some of the programming you have, it's cheating life. You're cheating a story, a generational story of why you should be stuck where you're at. If you don't have money, I promise you, your parents probably didn't have money. If you are struggling right now, there's probably a good chance somewhere in your history you were struggling. You didn't get into this pattern because you said as a baby, as an infant in a nursery with all total wild possibilities saying, I want to grow up and be in a struggle. This is programming. This is serious. And when you decide that you can start cheating that story, going, oh, so I don't like fish. I just will never be around another fish again.
So take it even a step before that. If you're sitting on this call, because I have done this, and I will go through it in different other phases in my life, but I did this. If you're sitting on this call and you're going, oh my gosh, he keeps talking about people struggling, and I know I'm struggling. That is a great place to be, because you've actually identified not only are you struggling, but you're actually hearing somebody who has struggled speak to you about how they've gotten out of the struggle. So that's a great place to start your story of success. You're identifying it now instead of just dealing with it.
And the craziest thing that you can do if you're struggling right now and you're a little frustrated right now, take a big breath in, exhale, and love it. If you have a choice between happiness and sadness in this moment right now, at this second, which would you choose? Then choose that no matter what you're going through right now, because I promise you it will change. The second you see that you love this moment that you're in, because you can't be in any other moment. If you love this moment, funny how stuff just starts to fall away. Is it easy to do? Yes. Is it simple to do? I don't know. I know it's easy. It's easy to say it. When you start to fall in love with you, the soul that has gotten you here, and when you fall in love with that soul and you begin to give it its light, and you begin to give yourself your due, your just, your day, your blessing, your peace, your next breath, it's less painful than the last breath. Your next breath is even better than the last breath. And in this moment, not even from when we started the call, not from when Rhonda pointed out the points that are wildly important, that made tremendous success to her and sense to her, not even 2 seconds ago, this moment, are you enjoying? You want to redo your programming? Start to look at it from joy, and you'll go, that really wasn't that bad. Me knocking the snot out of that kid really made me strong. You know what it did? It gave me a solid family. It made me determined. It made me all of these things. Because we can look at it. It's easy for somebody to go, yeah, but see, you were a bad girl back then. No, you were an amazing girl. You've just sometimes told the story a different way. Start to become aware. Radical, deep self-introspection. What guides you right now? Why are you still here? We're supposed to end the call at 7:30. Why are you still here? Well, because I don't have anything else to do. Why don't you have anything else to do? Why isn't your day already programmed and planned? Well, because this is more important. So it's not that nobody ever has time. It's that they don't value what they're going through right now. Something else is more important. What's the programming that makes something else more important? Make sense? This is a big one. This one, I mean, we could do the rest of the year just on this topic and still not scratch the surface. Was it valuable? I hope it was. Any last thoughts, comments before I let you off for your amazing Friday? Tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. Anybody else? Any last comments?
I just wanted to elaborate on what I said earlier on my breakthrough this morning. Good morning, everybody. First and foremost, but it was when you had said when Gisela had finished going over her story, and you had explained that she remembered it because it was an emotional experience. And it made me think about, like the reason why I said what I said is that women are more emotionally inclined, I guess, than men. But then I asked myself, are they? But that's just that's one thing why I figured why I'll say something and my wife will remember it a week later and she'll be like, well, don't you remember? No, of course not. I don't remember. And that's because
Did you hear that programming? Did you hear that programming? His wife all of a sudden turned into a guy from the bar. Well, don't you remember? That's how we deal with that.
It's programming, because as women from an early age, we're taught to notice these subtle little things like the body language, the emotional impact of things, because that's how we're taught to survive. That's the pattern we've learned to do. So we pick up on things like that quickly.
Yeah, it just made me realize that really you guys are more, I feel like, emotionally aware in a sense, because
it's called survival.
Yeah, exactly.
But here's the thing,
Absolutely.
I actually know the person who did the research, and if you want the research, I can pass it over. What he looked into and found out was the brain is non-binary. Gender doesn't matter. So everything that we learn as a female or as a male, so for female perspective, we learn to be responsive to the emotions, to the body language, etc. That's learned. There's no reason why you can't take a male kid and teach him the same thing in that respect. So
and that's why go ahead.
So all that is what we've learned is programming.
That was very girlish of you, Noah, to say, yeah, go ahead. That's how girls talk.
No, I wanted to hear what she said. What she said.
I know you were being polite. You were raised properly in the programming that we all accept.
But that's why I had the question to myself was, is it true that women are more emotionally inclined? And it goes back to what you just said, that anybody can be programmed in that way. You can take a male child and you can program him to be that way.
Yeah, but I would say that our parents and society had programmed us to believe that males don't show their feelings, they don't cry, they're weak if they do. So that's what, we kind of like identify, like men are more cold, women are more sensitive. And that's just because of society and our parents and our environment taught us that. But it's okay to be a sensitive man, and actually that's very appealing, having somebody that really understands your feeling, and it doesn't have to be our stories now.
Well, so let me let you in on a little science. There is a huge difference between the brain of a woman and a brain of a man, and then there's a huge difference between brain of women who have had children and women who have had not, because of fMRIs and all of this stuff. Can you have sympathy and empathy and be taught that? Yes. But there's things that guys' brains, we will never, ever, I don't care how much you teach us, train us. It is just, we are not wired that way. So this whole idea, why do women's brains change when they have, anybody ever hear a mommy brain?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mommy brain is, oh, I forget everything. No, you don't want to fight about anything. You now have this other little soul that you're going to have to take care of for the next 20 years. And if you needed food, you need to trust somebody. You need to be part of a community where you could be able to actually leave them with them so you could go get the food. You could travel out. You could be part of a community, somebody that's part of your social network. That's wired in from thousands of years ago. Did you realize that we all start off as female? How many of you knew that as a child?
Did not know that.
I heard that.
Yeah, we all start off as female. Then about 50% of the cases, there's this flood of testosterone that happens in the mother's body, and we turn into these chuckleheads. But we all start off as female. Little news for the day. Well, there you go, folks. Noah, thank you. Everybody, thank you. Stacy, Tessa, Giselle. Everybody appreciate it. Rhonda.
Thank
All
you
of you.
guys.
Amazing folks.
Mhm.
I appreciate you so much. I'm
Thank you
glad we
so
had
much,
these conversations.
So Sean, before we let you go again, what are the schedules for the weekend? So I get this time.
8:30 Central Time. So are you East Coast? You're New York?
No, Eastern
I'm in
time.
So 9:30 for you, 8:30 Central Standard Time.
and then Jersey is 8:30 or 9:30.
Yep.
Okay.
You do it Saturdays and Sundays too?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you all have an amazing start of the day and see you in the next call.
All right. I'm Sean Murphy along with Gisela. I'll see y'all where? At the
At
next
the
event.
next event. Love that line.
Love y'all. Oh, wait a minute. We got to do it one time. We got to do it. Here we go. Watch. Hi, Stacy. All right, everybody. Bye for now.